24th of March 1953, a very powerful lady finally left this earth, a powerful lady, part of the British monarchy for many years, and really, even to this day, she leaves an indelible mark on exactly how the monarchy was run. It's hard to imagine this because, of course, she just left around the time where the media was really coming into its own. If you remember, of course, later in the year, we had the first televised coronation, all put together by the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, who not only had a battle with the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth, but also a battle with this lady, the formidable Queen Mary of Teck. Oh yes, let me explain. Morning, good to see you, chums. Thank you so much as ever for joining me. I've always been fascinated by Queen Mary because I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. So we'll have a lovely wave. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for your time. But she has a look of the Queen. I think they're very similar when you see them riding in the carriages at a very young age. Now, I don't know if you also know this, but you see, Queen Mary was instrumental in the training of Queen Elizabeth and the Princess Rose, Margaret Rose. And what was interesting, you see, is that she sort of, alongside the Queen Mother, decided, well, actually, they may be better educated, even though we're educated inside the palace, but out going to museums, art galleries, that sort of thing, meeting people. And I think that's really what gave Queen Elizabeth such a broad mind. She'd been, open to so many things at a very young age, and we have Queen Mary to thank for that. Her reputation, goes by the fact that apparently she was something of a, how could we put this nicely, she liked things. And the thing was, which I find incredible, is when you look a little bit deeper, that actually wasn't the case. You see, in her sort of era, what would have happened, you would have invited her, say, to a country house. Remember, she lived in Marlborough House in London, which is a splendid residence even today. And the bottom line was that, she would be invited in. If she liked something, well, you were sort of suggested that perhaps, Queen Mary might like to take it with her. Now, let's not forget that Queen Mary, when she passed away in March of 1953, had the equivalent in a will, monetary terms, of around about 13 million. Right. So clearly very clever, and had some very rare artifacts, art pieces, all of that sort of stuff. Jewels she was interested in, but she preferred artwork. She said that was going to be far more valuable in the future. Of course, many people realise that she was instrumental in being rather ruthless, some people say, by cutting off her son David when he decided to abdicate way back in the 30s to marry the woman that he loved, Wallis Simpson. Now, moving forward, what was always fascinating, and I found this really interesting about looking into Queen Mary's background, and I've spoken to people that actually do remember or worked with people who, of course, knew her, and apparently she was able to just franchise from that and basically say that happened, you weren't really allowed to talk about it, and as we know, he only made very occasional visits back to see his mother. Apparently she couldn't forgive him for what he'd done. Naturally, of course, they shoved around everything in the hierarchy of monarchy, and that's really why we were fortunate in many respects to end up with the brilliant Queen Elizabeth for 70 years on the throne. But things could have been radically different. Now, here's where this gets interesting, because as we've now seen, many versions of events and stories and stuff like that people wanted to tell the story of Edward and Mrs. Simpson and the abdication. But she did two things that are really radical in basically royal terms today, right? And this is totally different to what people realise. The first thing was, when she passed away, she made sure that she was one of the first royals, if you like, to have her will sealed. And that means that we couldn't find out for many years exactly just how wealthy Queen Mary was when she passed away. And we saw that recently, didn't we, with the sad demise of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. That's all down to Queen Mary. Another thing that she refused to allow, particularly way back in the 1940s and early 1950s, was Gaumont British Productions film studios. They wanted to make the very first version of Edward and Mrs. Simpson on the big screen, and they had many different people in mind, and of course who was going to play Queen Mary. Now, this is where this gets interesting, because apparently in documentation, the person that she saw herself really sort of being able to carry off her role was none other than a superb actress called Dame Flora Robson. Now, Dame Flora Robson actually lives down in Brighton. There's a plaque, I believe, inside the Theatre Royal in Brighton to celebrate her many appearances there. Wonderful actress. But of course, apparently, what turned Queen Mary's head on Dame Flora Robson was that she was in a brilliant film called Holiday, starring Jack Warner, and she sort of played the woman in there. She said she's a brilliant actress, we like her. The other person that she quite liked was Greer Garson, and that's the reasons why you see those particular individuals in latter dramas and films being portrayed as Queen Mary after, of course, Queen Mary's death. She wouldn't allow any of these things to be made during her lifetime. She said it was too painful. Many people suggest, though, that clearly, whatever people were saying, that nobody had actually offered the money up front. And also, let's not forget, it was more deferential in that particular period, and nobody would dare go against the monarchy to make that type of movie while the present people were still alive. The only time really that happened was literally when they were doing the story of Edward and Mrs. Simpson, and for the first time Greer Garson appeared on stage in that role, and also another actress as a living member of the royal family as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. So when people talk about Queen Mary of Teck, remember, she was incredibly formidable. Neil Shawn, Kensington, London.